I'm assuming you guys know what case modding is?
Yeah.
So I have called around to a lot of my friends and on the forums, on the internet, Facebook, and gathered up a dream team of case modders. Basically, we're going to sit here and talk about each of the various different aspects of case modding, some of the works that we've done, and some of the things that you could do at home. So just to kind of give quick introductions, at my left, your right, we've got Brian Carter. Bod's Mods is the name of his group. He has done such mods as the Tron Light Cycle. I know you guys have probably, if you've been to PAX before, you probably saw it down the exhibition floor. Matter of fact, I don't think there's a single guy here that doesn't have one of their machines down on the exhibition floor, or at least some of their parts down on the exhibition floor. Next to Brian Carter, we've got Mike Landenberger, and his is Lutro Zero Customs, and he is our expert sleever. He's going to talk about sleeving today. Next to him, we've got Richard Siraz. He is our master of water cooling, and we'll be chatting about that. And then Bob Stewart will be talking about painting, lighting, and any other aspects. But let me just give you a quick little overview here. So just to kind of go through some of the works that I've done. If you guys were here last year, there was a hobbyist panel where I was the case modder on that. And since I'm kind of a hobbyist and these guys are pros, we'll kind of show you some of their works as well. The other thing I'd like to mention is all of these things up here are built either by these guys or other modders that we have in the audience. The one I'd really like to bring to your attention is the one that we're going to be donating to Child's Play. Each and every one of us put together some parts, and we'll be presenting it to Tally so that she can auction it off at Desert Bus for Hope, and every single cent will be going to Child's Play. So if you're interested in the gaming box, keep your eyes open. It's going to be this one right up here in front. EVGA provided the motherboard. It's the C77 for the Win motherboard. The video card was provided by Rich. I provided the processor. Who provided the SSD and the RAM? Crucial provided the SSD and the RAM. Cooler Master and Lee Harrington provided the box. Lee did the wonderful paint job. And if you get a chance to swing by BYOC, we actually had a case mod contest up there. And Anthony Lackey won the first place. His case is immaculate. Just awesome. It's this huge white clear thing with custom stiff line, water-cooled aluminum piping, chrome piping, beautiful sleeving, and deserved every accolade it got. But let's go ahead and just start things off. So, Brian, if you want to take it, and I will pull up your little sketches.
Yeah, my name is Brian, and I've been modding for about 9 years. I started in 2004, just messing around. Put a window and a light in the case, and I was pretty much hooked. Just have to keep going. I came from a hot rodding background, so me and my friends were always souping apart cars and stuff in high school. So when we got into computers, it was just kind of a natural thing to start souping up the computers, getting high performance parts in there and making it look nice. So what I was going to try and talk about was kind of the pre-biz part of case modding, and how I get that question asked a lot, is how I come up with case mod ideas and whatnot. And so I think about games or movies, any kind of theme that would be conducive to a good case mod. And when I try and come up with the idea and I get a concept in my head, I kind of there's no better substitute than pen and paper. Just immediately jotting stuff down, but taking the next step to get more of a feel of how it's going to look on the case. I use Photoshop quite a bit, and just going through Google Images to try and, there's a case that I'm currently working on, the cruiser case. Basically just found images from Google and, did a lot of photoshopping to make it look like what I wanted it to look like. And once I get that basic idea of how the thing is going to look, I'll go into SketchUp, which is a really cool 3D modeling program. It's free. Google had it on their site for a while, but I think they sold it off to Trimble, I think it was. So if you just Google SketchUp, you'll find it. It's free to download, even though they have a pro version for like $500, $600. But it's just such an easy program to learn and to create a 3D model of the case itself. I've done numerous cases and just using SketchUp for previs, and especially for custom cases, it's really good to come up with the spatial concerns. With all the hardware, you got to know how it's all going to fit into the case, and sizing it to make sure all the pieces fit perfectly. Like I did with the Tron case, I built that completely into SketchUp. And there's actually a collection website that has a lot of PC hardware already made. So you just drop those in, all the pieces that you want, and then you can set it up. It's really quick and easy. So yeah, once I get all that done, then it's a matter of actually going and building the parts. Excuse me. So that's pretty much what I got.
Great, thank you, Brian. So next, we'll go ahead and put Mike on the spot here. If you want to go ahead and tell everybody about sleeving.
Nice. So how many guys in here, guys and girls, have actually heard of sleeving or have a good idea of what it is? You guys raise your hands. Okay, so about half-half. Sleeving in itself has been around for a very long time now. The power supplies that we have now that come retail, we're just starting to get into the realm of them starting to be individually sleeved straight from the factory. Most of them are bundle sleeved, which we've all seen, a lot of the Corsair ones and whatnot. That was actually the beginning, and it's funny how power supply manufacturers actually went back to the beginning of how power supplies we used to actually mod them to do that. When power supplies first came out, they were ugly, totally not painted. The cables had a bunch of clear beige clips on them, and then there was no sleeving on them whatsoever. So basically the beginning of cable sleeving was we took like a PET, which is a plastic filament, polyester, and it was a very loose braid. It was very open. It kind of looked like fishnet. And basically, we would put those out in power supplies. The beginning modders would actually paint power supplies, and we had to do everything from scratch. Now you can just go out and you can get a full individually sleeved power supply, and it's already painted black and it's already done for you. It took a while, but eventually individual sleeving came about. And there's 500 different people that all take credit for being the first person to do individual sleeving. I wouldn't even start to dare to tell you guys or who it was or who did it or who started it. But it has become a huge trend nowadays. Whenever you see a professional mod or any kind of mod on the show floor like you've seen downstairs, if you guys have had a chance to go check out the Cooler Master booth, you'll see that all of the cables are individually sleeved and then bundled, and then not only that, but they're taken in a way that kind of flows with the case. So cable sleeving has become a tool to kind of more represent the colors of a case mod, more get into it with the details, and more bring a flow of color. What's awesome is that a lot of modders have even went a step further, and they'll have a completely plain case, and then their color element will come from the sleeving. So that PET has evolved so much through the years. If you guys have heard of sleeving or been in the sleeving game, you've probably heard of MDPC at one point in time. They get a lot of credit. The owner's name is Nils Popke, and they're from Germany. And he has been around for a very long time. He was the first to really worldwide produce sleeving just for individual sleeving, just for power supplies, and it was a very niche network. And through the years, it's developed over and over and over and over. There's different weaves and braids, and I could really get into that, but that would really bore you, and you guys probably wouldn't want to hear about that anyway. But if you showed you some of those pictures, you can see how the different weave. Can you go back to that brown one? Yes. If you can see the braiding on there, that is actually one of my own that I came up with, and it's called stiff line. Whoa. And you can see the individual braiding, the way it weaves tighter and tighter so that you can't even see it. Now, it's been produced so that it's easy to do heat shrinkless, and most of the beginning, when we first started getting into individual sleeving, everything was done with heat shrink. And if you've ever worked with it, it's a pain in the butt. It's not fun to work with at all. It's really hard to get straight. It's very tedious. Sleeving in general was always going to be tedious, but for that custom look, that is the only way that you're going to be able to get it. You can go to the next one. And you can see that the colors have, evolved. They go from anywhere from pink to trying to match components. Most CaseModders nowadays, what they try to do is they try to match the components that are already in the system. As you can see in the Cooler Master one down here, I've put red sleeving or red stiff line on the GPU, and if you guys get a chance to later look up underneath the cage, and you'll see the full 24 pin, like I have on there, rainbowed, one of them anyway. Yeah, one of those. And as you can see, there's different bends and there's different forming, just like these guys form metal in the same thing. People that sleeve or sleevers, myself, we'll do the same thing with the cable sleeving. And it's funny how case modding is kind of compartmentalized, that people geek out, like myself for instance, just on this. And there's people that do just lighting, people that do just case, fabrication. Case modding in itself is just like an onion. There's a layer upon a layer upon a layer upon a layer. And cable sleeving is just one of those things that add on to the full aspect of the whole case mod experience. And as he showed you, there's so many different ways and forms, and my company, Mudro Customs, comes out with different braids. We have stiff line, Telios, and even coreless paracord. And it's just going to keep on evolving as case modding keeps evolving, and sleevings become such a standard now. Like I said earlier, it's just going to keep evolving. It's going to keep getting easier. Eventually, companies are going to start coming out with color packages like this, and Bitphoenix and EVGA have already started doing that, because as you get into modding and as you get into really messing with your case, not everybody has the time to sit down and do full sleeving like this. Because it's tedious and you gotta have the hands for it and whatnot. But as case modding goes, sleeving is just gonna keep evolving with it. And that's all I got.
Cool. Hey, thank you, Mike. Next, Bob Stewart. We were skipping Rich. Rich is best for last.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about painting and some lighting as well. And he's going to run a little video of just some of the builds that I've done, and we'll just keep the sound off. But just kind of check it out. How many people here do their own painting? See your hands. So a few. All right. How many people think that they can't paint? Okay, so since you have your hand up still, go back up. Since you got your hand up, can you go like this with your finger? Okay, there is one guy that can't paint. So. Really that's all it takes. It starts out with a spray can and you just kind of graduate up to different things. And so before you know it, you'll have an airbrush in your hand and you'll be doing all kinds of crazy stuff. But there's some tricks to it, obviously. There's some things you'll learn along the way. And I got my start. I was an automotive enthusiast like Brian over there, and I've restored numerous cars and done a lot of custom paint jobs and stuff like that, and full restorations. So, I just kind of learned it there. And then when I went to my first LAN party, I saw Rich here had these fancy painted cases, and it just kind of all clicked. I thought, man, I never thought of that. I could do some of that, you know. So that's how it all got started. But so this is just showing different things I've done and some of the, you know, just media stuff that they ran through and things like that. But also, before I get started here with too much, I want to recognize a person here, a guy that's helped me quite a bit on some of my builds here recently and stuff, and his name is Rod Rosenberg, and he's right here. Will you stand up, Rod? So he's already a really good modder and everything himself, but we've been pretty busy lately with a lot of builds, so he kind of comes and helps me out, and so he knows all my secrets. So security, is there security? I'm out here before he tells everybody everything I know here. So, but anyway, thanks, Rod, for all your help. I really appreciate it. And I mean, it's not really just help. We're kind of, you know, we do it together and stuff. So just want to recognize him. But so with paint, you know, it starts out, there's kind of a good, better, best. Really, you can use a spray can. You can go to, you know, whatever store, buy a spray can and do that. Or you can, if you want to go up to a little better system and you want to buy just a cheap spray gun, you can use, they have quarts of paint that are like pre-mixed, and also they're ready to spray. So they're already reduced down, things like that. And that's really easy to do, and it's pretty cheap. And if you want to go to the best route, usually what I use is automotive paint. It's a acrylic urethane base coat, clear coat. So the only problem there is it's really expensive. Like that was about $900 worth of paint materials right there. So red is the most expensive, obviously. So, but let's see what else I have. One of the things with paint is you run into problems. It seems like there's maybe one way to do it right and about 1,000 ways to do it wrong. So if you've ever painted, you've maybe experienced some weird things where it wrinkles or it runs, or, you know, all those different kinds of things. And that has to do with temperature, humidity, just, you know, maybe applying the wrong kind of primer first or something like that. So just always read the directions, basically. And then, you know, YouTube has tons of videos on there, and good helpful videos on how to, you know, spray and all those tips and tricks and stuff like that.
I shot that video.
Speaking of which, the throne, the one that's up there now, is actually down in one of the booths.
Kingston booth right
Kingston
now.
booth? Yeah, I saw it coming.
And those are fake welds, by the way. We you know, we had the trolls come out in full force on some of the different videos and stuff, and they were commenting on how those were the crappiest welds they'd ever seen. And so I took it as a compliment, because the fact that they thought they were real welds was good, because that's what I was going for. So whether they thought they were crappy or good, I guess it was still a compliment. So, but that was just an example of something where I utilized my former experience with the automotive industry. I used an automotive seam sealer in a caulking gun and produced weld beads, and then just painted and airbrushed everything in there and stuff. So yeah, just give it a nice effect. But yeah, Rod and I worked really hard on that one. There was a lot of hours there. So, but the other thing is lighting. Probably the newest trend right now is LED strip lighting, and some of them are remote control, some of them are single color, some are multicolor. All kinds of stuff like that, and the thing that's nice about the RGB LED light strips is that they can be changed to any color you want. And so, you know, you're in the mood for blue one day, you turn it to blue. If you want red, you have red, whatever and stuff. But if you're looking at, yeah, there's remote controls, there's different ones, 24 key, 44 key, that kind of stuff. And also there's waterproof and non-waterproof, and so if you're looking at purchasing some, you want to pay attention to what you're getting. There's two different sizes. There's 35/28s and there's 50/50s, and that refers to the size of the chip. And the 50/50s are a little bit bigger chip, and they're also a tri-LED, so they have the red, green, and blue all built into the one lens. So it produces actual real colors rather than pulling a red light, a green light, and a blue light and blending them and stuff like that. So, but, and then there is waterproof and non-waterproof, which, you know, in a computer you don't really need waterproof unless you spring a leak. You know, one of Rich's water, you know.
We're big on
systems are-
leaks.
Yeah, it happens. So, but the waterproof strips actually, they have a silicone shield over them, and it does kind of help make the light glow a little bit nicer. So they're typically a little bit more money, but they are a nice system. So that's one thing I recommend, and we use those in all of our builds. And so that's pretty much all I have.
Perfect, thanks Bob. And now we're going to go ahead and go to the professor here, Rich Siroz, who recently accepted a position doing chair for information technologies for a college.
Yeah, so it's cool. Not only do I get to do case modding, but I get to teach case modding. So we do water cooling and liquid nitrogen cooling, all kinds of cool stuff in my college. So,
And what college is that?
I teach at ITT in Salem, Oregon, chair of IT. By the way, my name is Richard, but do Google search for Darth Beavis, and if you find some really embarrassing pictures, don't hold it against me.
There's lots of them.
So we're going to go a little bit back to the feature, talking about case modding overall, and this really goes across the board. In the computer enthusiast niche, we actually have two groups, kind of like Apple and PC users, and we go back and forth and kind of fight a little bit. We have those who are going for performance, like overclocking your PC, and we have those who are going for aesthetics. But it actually all started as going back for performance. So if you look way back, even before the PSUs that Mike was talking about, we had really nasty wiring in computers. If you remember those IDE ribbon cables. And so if you picture trying to do wire management with those puppies, the main thing, or the main problem, besides looking McNasty, is that it really blocks the airflow. And when you block airflow, your computer heats up. You might end up having shutdowns, or you can't overclock and you can't get the performance gain that you want. So back in the day, we had to basically do origami, with that type of wire management. And so they eventually came out with, the power supplies that had the bundled cables. And then awesome studs like Mike and others came up with individual sleeve cables, which would allow you to actually route it underneath the motherboard tray or to hide it. And so there was a paradigm for a while that wire management was about hiding the cables, not having them visible. That was the entire goal. You were the biggest pimp if you could hide all your cables. You couldn't even tell they were there. And then when people like Mike came around and you have cables that look like works of art, you're actually able to have the cable be part of the aesthetics of the case and be a highlight in the feature, not something to hide. So that's kind of shows you that modding has evolved, and so we still try to go for performance, but now there's kind of like a gap between some people who just want aesthetics and they're going to go for the pimpest case you can, but maybe they're going to scrimp on hardware, and it's more like an art form. Some people are just going for performance, but when we come to water cooling, that kind of brings it all back in. And water cooling, again, just like with the wire management, was initially designed for performance. So we made our own water blocks. It looked like really ghetto. We would use heater cores from cars. I mean, it was just absolutely ugly, but it was cool because it was different. And we got to increase the performance of our computers. And you're probably wondering, well, how does water cooling allow you to increase performance? It's all about overclocking. So when you overclock a CPU, one of the key things that you do is you increase voltage to the processor. Once you increase voltage, you increase heat. And at a certain point, your computer can just handle it, and then it'll go into thermal shutdown. And so, the overclocking process is a matter of bumping up your front side bus and giving a little bit of voltage, find out when it's blue screen, you back off a little bit, you find a sweet spot, and you're good to go. The water cooling allows you to actually pull off more heat, so you can get a better overclock. At least, that's how it traditionally was.
And so we came up with all kinds of wild water-cooled systems. And of course, there's more extreme things we could do, like phase change, which uses refrigeration to get your processor down below ambient, and liquid nitrogen and liquid helium. But liquid cooling is accessible by the mainstream. Most of us can do it. So that's the reason behind it. And as time is developed, and more manufacturers are paying attention to those of us who are do-it-yourselfers and want to have aesthetic, just like you see with the beautiful cables, well, they've also developed special products for water coolers. So you'll have really nice, beautiful water blocks like by EK. Companies like Primal Chill make colored tubing. We just have like a whole array of products that CaseModders used to have to fab by hand that are widely available for everybody. So it's a lot easier now to water cool, but it still takes a lot of skill. And as CaseModders, have you seen? Well, if you saw with some of the other cases, we push the envelope. So we use water cooling tubing that's flexible, it's beautiful, but we still need to push the envelope. So we want to do something different. So now we're doing hard lines. And they could be metal hard lines, and now we're using acrylic hard lines. So if you see if we can look at the Queen of Blades. So you can actually take hard acrylic and you can bend it to be the exact shape that you want.
The last one, Charlie.
Oh, that's good.
We'll talk about that later.
How'd that get there?
So the bottom line is that there's a wide array of products. And how many people here have water cooled before or thought about it? Okay, so you have some options. So if you're first beginning, they have what they call AIO water cooling. So everything is included. Companies like Corsair and Thermaltake make really nice ones. And those are completely legitimate. They will allow you to dissipate enough heat from today's cooler running processors that you could get a nice 5 gigahertz stable overclock with a couple clicks of a button. But if you wanted to go with discrete water cooling, which is where you buy all the separate components, there are so many products available. Now, doing something like this would probably be a little bit harder for a first timer, but that's something you progress up to. But you could go to companies like Performance PCs and just buy all the parts that you possibly want, any color theme that you want, no matter what kind of components you have in your PC. If you have one CPU and one video card, or if you have 4-way SLI, I hope now you do Crossfire, right? The AD people. Get off the stage. So pretty much no matter what you want, you can buy. But there's some basic things that you should think about if you're water cooling. So it's probably like any of the other project or types of modding up here. Number one is to have a plan. So you don't just rush out, buy a bunch of stuff, and hey, we're going to cram it in this case and fire that puppy up. Because I've done that before, and it creates quite a mess if you have a problem. So plan. Do your research. So come out on forums. So how many people here are from PDX Land? CaseModders. So you come out to PDX Land, come out to the forums, and say you think about water cooling, and you'll find so much support to come out and just walk you through step by step by step. So come out, be part of the community, do your research, and then once you go through and you actually start installing the parts and take precautions like do a leak test. Leak test is very critical. That means that you don't apply power to your motherboard for the first 24 hours. You just jumper your PSU so you have the pump running and the water running through your system. That could be installed on your components or outside of your case beforehand. It depends on how paranoid you are. But do that so that way, if you have problems, you catch it ahead of time and you don't fry your hardware. So once you do your leak test, you have a nice system built out. I'm not going to walk you through that because it's going to be on the scope of a short conversation. But if you have questions about it, you can contact me or come out on the forums. But what I always try to instill is, if you're going to do this enthusiast type thing, it's cool. But if you don't share it, then it's like if no one saw it, then who knows about it, right? So how many people do LAN parties here? Okay, so the rest of you should be coming out to LAN parties. We have a BYOC here, or probably the best LAN party on the planet is PAX LAN. So you come out and show your rig, come out to a LAN party, and make a work log out on forums. So how many people go out on forums here? Yeah, so make sure you come out and you do a work log and you share your work. And of course, if you want to pick a good site, so you don't want to have trolls that are flaming you, because then you have to go out and kill them. Leverage what you've learned and share, let other people learn as well. And grow. Because if, we're in a little niche group as it is, and we want to expand, just like with PAX, with our tabletoppers and gamers and stuff. If you look at the total population of the United States, we're a small group too, but we want to share it, we love it, and so let's continue that same thing with the enthusiast niche, and hopefully we'll see more and more custom case mods from professionals like us, and even people like you out on the floor or out at the BYOC.
Cool, thanks, Rich. So just to kind of expound on what Rich mentioned, we are a community just like PAX is a community. Matter of fact, we're part of the PAX community. And in response to that, like he was saying, go to bittech.net, overclock.net or .com. The Mod Zoo, Modders Inc. is another good one. It's what the majority of the QuakeCon people go to. And these are places where you can ask questions, find out how things are done, and everybody, their brother and sister, will answer those questions for you. So,
But that doesn't mean you take the first answer as being the right one.
yeah. So, being the fact that we are a community, we wanted to leave a good portion of this open for question and answers, but before you all get up, we wanted to give back to the community, and if you check under your seats, some of them are going to have little clips. Anybody that has a little clip will get a prize. We've got some sleeving packages, we have some lighting packages, and there's plenty of empty seats, so you might want to check that there as well. We also have a power supply and fans. So after questions and answers are done, we'll go ahead and give you guys those prizes.
They're literally little
And then I got
clips. So
The most efficient way is to low crawl on your back going.
So if you guys want to line up for questions and answers, and then if you did find one of these little clips. Oh yeah, 11.
Oh, wow.
So there should be 11, but let's go ahead. First person.
I'm not trying to be cool. I was at the HP pub crawl last night.
We still think you're too cool for school.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to Grant Beavis though. He gave me a ton of help on hardcore when I started case modding. I actually do desk builds, and so super helpful. Really appreciate it. You do a ton for the community. It's amazing the work you do.
Thank you.
But and also anyone who's looking at sleeping, do not do paracord. Just go straight to MDPC and just do it right. It's so much easier. I tried both. It's terrible. What I was going to ask you about is, do you think that with obviously computers being one of the most important components of our lives, that we're seeing this huge rise in case modding and desk modding and everything else, because it is like your house, your car, one of those things that if it fails, if something happens, your life goes on hold. Do you guys see that as a big component of why we're seeing so much more interest in really showing off and glamorizing and customizing the way people use their computers?
Yeah, I think definitely computers are an integral part of our life. And with our generation, we have a totally different perspective. We really care about aesthetics. And so, it allows us to integrate, that level of creativity, and we want performance, so we can, bring it all together. So I think it will hopefully keep growing, even with the proliferation of other devices, or like the NVIDIA Shield, the nice handheld. That's still, if you want to take that to the full potential, what do you need? A high-end PC, right? Or a high-end gaming system. And so you're going to want to overclock that puppy. You're going to want to get the most bang for the buck. And I think everybody wants to have a beautiful rig on their desk. If you don't have a window in your rig, then you're wrong. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
So back in the day, and maybe I'm remembering my history wrong, but back in the day, every single computer box was the beige box. Nowadays, I don't think you can actually buy one. Do you think case modding and the enthusiast culture has forced manufacturers to start doing the more colors, and like you're saying now, the power station or power supplies are coming actually painted and looking nice. Do you think the modding community has had a big influence in that?
Oh, real quick, just to address it, yes, you can still buy the beige computer box. There's a place in Seattle called RePC where you can get a 1970s computer case about the size of this podium. And it would be $2. If you can carry it out, they might even give it to you for free. But that's one of those resources that you can find in your own local towns if you're not from here. You can get antique looking cases. One of the mods I did was in an old tube tester. So I just shelled out the inside of that. And actually, Richard judged that case. It was the first case modding contest I actually got into. And while I didn't place, he did actually have some really good advice for me as well. But case questions?
Yeah, actually the beige PC, one of the case manufacturers just for like a limited edition went back and did a beige PC because you can't, they just don't come like that anymore. As it grows, and like Richard was saying here, we keep pushing the envelope. So as consumers, we keep demanding different products, and if the hardware manufacturers are going to keep up, is they're always asking, look at the community, seeing what people are doing, and then they start bringing out hardware. I mean, just like I said, the power supply evolved from being completely ugly to being something that you can just pop in, and it is completely about aesthetics. That's why water cooling is coming all in one now, so people can easily get into water cooling. And yeah, definitely. The more we push the envelope, the more people get into building, the more people have feedback. I would even go so far as to say, any piece of hardware that you see out there that's been aesthetically altered to be pleasing has been a mod at some point or another. Somebody has sat down and made it look like that. A company took notice, a bunch of people liked it, and then they mass produced it. So absolutely, and as we keep pushing it, that's just going to keep going down that way.
And I should also add that a lot of us up here actually consult with different companies. So they saw our case modding, and they had us do commission projects, and so we actually have input on designs, and you'll see. Where's it at? So if you look at this this case over here, that came out to particularly focus on enthusiasts. So they looked at some of the shortcomings in other cases, and they designed, Case Labs designed a fully modular case, so all the panels come off. You can do any type of configuration you want. So that represents manufacturers having their pulse on the community, and we're actually driving innovation instead of the other way around. Thank you.
Yeah, if you notice, just to add, like, originally there weren't windows on the sides and things like that, so all the little things we've done through the years, they see, that the marketing reps will come to the larger LAN parties and things like that, and they go through and they see what everybody's doing, and the more they see of a certain thing, they kind of clue in that, hey, we should maybe do that, because if that's what's popular, that's what we can sell, and so they do that. So back to your beige question, remember, I showed you. In case you want beige right there. Thanks.
First off, I'd like to say thanks to Rich. Your video with Husky StarCraft really introduced me to case modding. I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you.
My question is, how do you feel that 3D printing technology is going to affect case modding?
Yeah, 3D printing technology is actually extremely exciting. Before, to do any type of customization, like you'd have to use a CNC mill or a router or laser. So this actually allows us to, at a low price point, do customization. So like, we use Google SketchUp and stuff. If you can draw something in Google SketchUp, you can export it and you can 3D print it. So anybody can do it. So it's really huge. It allows us to do rapid prototyping as well. So when we're working with companies, we can come up with a design, and then we could have another company actually fabricate it if it's something that's more complex or needs a higher level of structural integrity. But it's been a godsend. I'm using it to go with Mike's products to do some custom wire management features. And actually, we'll be using it for a coming project I can't tell you too much about, but it's StarCraft related.
The other thing about the 3D printing is that, like everything else, the technology gets better and better the more we use it. So the DPI and all that kind of stuff is just going up and up. So the products are, that you can put out are getting smoother and really refined. So it's just the beginning, I think. And now I thought I saw, like, what's a Target or something? It's selling 3D printers with software and everything for pretty cheap. So
the Microsoft retail stores actually have MakerBots now. I know.
It's crazy. So yeah, it's just pretty soon we'll be making our own dishware and everything. So.
I've been using 3D printers as well. As you can kind of see, I've tossed up there. I've done some aluminum casting for some of the parts that I've been doing. And a 3D printer is awesome for making these lost foam or lost plastic pores. You can basically already print the screw out on the top, so that when you pour the molten aluminum down into it, it actually just burns everything right out, and you have a custom aluminum part that you just printed out of plastic. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, so, and I think the point where I'll actually be happy is when I can produce something like what Boddicker does by hand with a 3D printer. This man, if you haven't seen his work, this man is, I'm not worthy. This man is a master. With hand carving. If you've seen his Tron or his Battlestar Galactica build. So, if we can finally get to that point to where someone like me who doesn't have the skills that Boddicker does, if I could do what he does with just my vision and being able to draw it up, then I think that will, push case modding to that much level of a higher level, and then he'll have to come up with something even crazier.
I'll step it up. Next one.
Can I do a few rapid fire resource and method questions?
Yeah.
This might touch each of you. I want to strip a case that's been painted, and I'd like to do a sort of voodoo green kind of thing. I want to know, I know that's a layered paint job. Do I prime? Is there a particular method I should use?
Absolutely, and there was no way in 5 minutes I could cover everything that there possibly was. So, first of all, it's helpful to know what the first layer is, I guess you could say. So, typically cases come powder coated these days. So you have to realize that powder coating is actually a plastic. And
how about if we go off of like an anodized aluminum?
Okay, so anodizing is a whole other process where you can remove the anodizing, but it's very difficult. It's basically it's been chemically transformed into aluminum oxide, is what the anodizing is. So it's extremely tough, and I did see a DIY YouTube video of somebody showing how to do it in their own home, and I kind of tried it, and it didn't have that great of results. But it's basically one of those where if you took it to a shop that does that kind of stuff, they could probably remove it for you faster than anything. And the other option would be to sand it down, which, again, because it's been transformed into what's essentially aluminum oxide, that's the same as what sandpaper is, so you're kind of going to go through a lot of sandpaper. So, but, getting it back down to metal is the first step, and then you always want to at least use a primer. I personally use a sealer. It's an epoxy sealer, because plastic and metal, so like the case itself, the shell is metal, the panels, top and front or whatever, are going to be plastic. They actually take paint differently. So it's like if you ever notice on new cars, they have the bumper skins are plastic and the car itself is metal. Well, if you look at a metallic painted car, you can see in the light the colors will look different, and that's because one is metal, one is plastic. So even though they've been primed and everything the same way, it's just the way it reacts. So, but if you use a sealer or an epoxy sealer, you can get around that. So that would be the most important thing, is if you can find an epoxy sealer or just a couple good layers of good primer. So, and then start from there. So
Actually, so we'll answer the rest of your questions afterwards, but just so we can get a couple other people, because we're about 5 minutes here before we start having people get their prizes.
gentlemen. Within the modding community, there's a bit of a smaller niche market of people who attempt to do completely passive cooling systems, and they come up with some very creative solutions, such as mounting ionic breezes in the front of their case. While running heavily ionized air over electrical components is not always the greatest idea, I just wondered what you guys saw as a future for passive cooling products that are going to be available.
That's a good question, really. It's I pretty much try to stay at the higher cutting edge. So like most of my builds have at least 3 GPUs. So I have a higher TDP that I need to deal with. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could do, but as far as passive, you're probably worried about noise. And with the higher quality fans that we have now, like even if you're Queen of Blaze with as many fans as I have in there, it's extremely quiet. I think instead of really using passive cooling, you could use alternate forms of liquid cooling where you'd have a remote radiator, so you could actually place it away from your system. To use quick disconnects.
Absolutely.
Technology is changing like everything else too. I mean, you look at some of the power supplies now, there's no fan, it's just, so there's always something in the works that, we don't hear about right away, and, they're in testing and things like that, so, and even if we did know, we probably couldn't.
Yeah. The one good thing about with water cooling and air cooling is the Intel and NVIDIA in particular have done a really good job with their R&D, and so the TDP on their newer components, while they're higher power, keeps dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. So if you look at like the GTX 480, it was a hot puppy. I mean, you could cook an egg on it. But the 680 and 780 is actually run a lot cooler. The same thing with Intel. Their newer processors, Moore's law is still in effect with the increase in transistors and the shrinkage of the die size. But if you look at the TDP, it just keeps going down and down and down and down. So that means that we don't have to put as much emphasis on, removing the heat. And so, you could actually, probably run in a home theater PC a nice passive cooled system, and it would actually still operate nice.
And as you said yourself, it's a niche market, and you got to remember water cooling and everything that's progressed this far has been a niche market at one point in time. They were carving, radiators out of cars and stuff to get it going, and I've seen a lot of passive cooled systems. When or if that'll ever hit retail depends on the amount of people that are going to show interest into it.
All right, got time for one more question. Sorry, yeah, you guys feel free to come up and chat with us afterwards. And we also have business cards, so feel free to email or talk to us. But your question?
There are some pretty wild theme cases out there, StarCraft in particular. Do you guys ever run into copyright or trademark infringement issues?
That'd be a big yes. I can't talk about too much about things that are in progress, but I just finally got some art approved for an event coming up, and I can't say. And it's been an absolute nightmare because some companies are really, really, really protective of their intellectual property. The main thing is that, if you're going to be selling it for profit, I think you guys can attest to this, it can, kind of be a fine line. So sometimes it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Oh, you stole my line.
Yeah,
No, it's, I usually do it, and then I just don't say anything, and then say, oh, I didn't know.
If you're making a one-off case, if you're just making one of 15, then typically they're not going to bother you about it. But if you start making 10 or 20 or 30 Tron cases, then Disney's probably going to come after you.
Well,
I think.
And I think where you run into issues is there's a difference of, are you just building your own case and doing some customizations and putting a name of something on there, or are you hired by one of the larger manufacturers to build something for them that they may promote and do things and gain something from it? Then if you run into a copyright problem, it'll be from that most likely. So
I think that's the biggest thing right there. Is if you're just doing a case for yourself, you'll be fine. But if somebody's marketing it or making money or profiting off of it, then you're going to run into problems.
I think our biggest problem isn't necessarily copyright, it's NDAs. I recently worked on a project where I had 4 NDAs for different companies, all for one thing that I was working on. I still really can't talk about what it was, but it's always fun to do those projects.
And you just mentioned NDA, so you violated it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like the Fight Club, the first rule is you don't talk about it.
All right, thanks for joining us, and if we can give all our panels here a nice round of applause.